Have you ever experienced yourself setting intentions or goals and then not following through on them, or doing the exact opposite of what that intention or goal was over time? Or maybe you set an intention to become this next level version of yourself, this ideal version of yourself, but then you ended up being the old version of yourself shortly after setting those intentions. These are indications of something that shows up in our unconscious mind, these patterns that kind of pull us back, or they self-sabotage the intentions that we have for ourselves, maybe within business and our career or financial situation, maybe with health and wellness, maybe within our relationships. This is what I want to talk about today: shadow work, and what the shadow is, how it shows up, and how to work with it so that we can step more and more into the versions of ourselves that we know deep down inside we are capable of being, and to fulfill the intentions and the goals that we have for ourselves. So first and foremost, let's talk about what the shadow is. According to the Swiss psychologist Carl Jung, the shadow selves is the parts of ourselves that we have pushed aside or repressed or put somewhere in our subconscious, unconscious mind, not on purpose, but because we kind of had to in order to stay in connection with our families or societies. And this is kind of the part of ourselves, or the parts of ourselves that might have felt shame or judgment or condemnation in some way from people around us. We've had to repress them in order for us to stay safe. And just a quick distinction too, Carl Jung said we have both our personal shadow, like stuff that we've been through our own conditioning and trauma and all these different things, but then also we have a collective shadow, which is kind of the connection we have to the greater whole of most people have these types of shadows and these parts of ourselves. So it's both the personal shadow and the collective shadow. So how does this show up in our lives? If we have an intention or a goal or an intention to be that next level version of ourselves, then we might find ourselves, or the shadow might show up as self-doubt, or it might show up as self-criticism or perfectionism or people-pleasing or fear around something. It might show up as us sabotaging by, having a really good week of doing all the things that we're supposed to do around our health, or the goals that we had if we were training and taking care of our diet. And then all of a sudden on the weekend, we're binging and drinking alcohol, or we're eating a bunch of candy, and we're kind of like resetting ourselves back to that same where we were, essentially. And this is, again, very clear, often indications of our shadow selves coming into play. And it's really important to understand too that our shadow selves are not bad. They're not there to be they're not scary. It's our minds that make it so they're scary. Usually they're just parts of ourselves that hold on to some emotions that are uncomfortable to feel, perhaps, maybe some beliefs about ourselves, about our worthiness, or fear around what might happen if we were to be successful in the intentions and the goals that we have, or what might happen if we were stepping in more to our ideal version of ourselves. What would people say? And then unconsciously, we might then be sabotaging or blocking ourselves from really embodying and being those versions of ourselves because we're scared of what rejection we perhaps maybe might feel from others. Or it's just like the sense of fear of success as much as it is like the comfort we might feel around our old versions, the old patterns that we have. There's so much comfort that's there, right? And when we step into growth, when we step into being those versions of ourselves that we know we have capable of being, that is where we will meet these patterns and these behaviors and these thoughts and these parts of ourselves that we're usually not that aware of. And to me, in my opinion, this is where the biggest growth happens. Like, we can't self-develop and go into these things and grow if we're not meeting these shadow selves and integrating them. And we're going to talk about what that actually means. What does integration actually mean, and why it's important? Because the thing is, if we're not looking at the versions of or the kind of darker aspects of ourselves, if you will, or the annoying aspects of ourselves, the self-sabotaging aspects of ourselves, they will show up. They will take over, likely. They will kind of, make themselves known, and they'll kind of be like jumping up and down, like, please pay attention to me. Like, I'm here. I'm showing myself in your life. I'm blocking you in your life right now because I'm asking for your intention. I'm asking for you to integrate into your wholeness. I'm asking you to recognize me and see me so that I don't try to get your attention through annoying patterns and habits in our lives that are blocking us from what we really want to do. So what I want to do is give you 2 journaling questions that you can start going into to start doing this work within yourself, because it's one of the most transformational things that we can do. When we're aware of the things that we haven't been aware of ourselves, we feel more agency, we feel more power, we feel more self-acceptance and love. And so again, those parts of ourselves aren't trying to get our attention in ways that we don't like. Because again, the way that they can try to get our attention is through our self-doubt. It can be through our self-criticism. It can be fear of judgment of others. It can be through people-pleasing. It can be through any form of sabotage, essentially. So when we are aware of them, we have more power, we have more agency. And this is the thing, it's not about condemning any of these parts of ourselves, because nothing can transform without acceptance. It will, if we condemn, if we judge these parts of ourselves, which we all have, by the way, that is where they feel oppressed and even more separate from us, even more pushed down somewhere in the basement of our unconscious mind. And guess what? They're going to make themselves known, because they're not going away. The only way that they go away, which they don't, is through integration, is through recognizing that they're there, through giving them acceptance, through acknowledging that they're just trying to protect in some way, or they're trying to help with self-preservation in some way. And that acknowledgement and that acceptance is what makes us feel more whole and capable and powerful to keep going in the level or on the path that we want to go on, right? So number 1, when it comes to shadow work and how you can start doing it, is you can ask yourself, you can pull out a journal, and you can ask yourself, what is the worst thing that someone might call me? What is the worst thing that if someone were to say out loud, maybe in front of a bunch of people, and say this out loud in front of them, and they would say this about me, what would that be? And just start seeing what comes up. My biggest fear is to be seen as irresponsible, or someone saying that I'm irresponsible. My biggest fear is that I'm too much, or I'm not good enough, or that I'm not worthy, or I'm hopeless. I know for myself, one of the biggest shadows I've had, and I've been doing shadow work for a long time now, and in all different areas. And one thing that has been really big for me has been around money and business, and this fear I've had of people seeing me as being irresponsible around money, or that I'm not capable of creating wealth or financial prosperity. And it all stems back to my childhood. It all stems back to parts of me that learned that I wasn't worthy of having certain things, parts of me that learned that money was really a scary thing, and I had some really disempowering beliefs about money and fear around it and attachment stuff around it. And the more I could kind of see the parts of me that I was scared of acknowledging within myself through journaling practice, the more I could see it, the less problems I have, because I can then integrate these parts of myself. And this, by the way, is something that it takes time, it takes commitment to looking at, and it takes love and acceptance and compassion. Oftentimes, shadow work can be heavy for our system and for our bodies, depending on how much we have been through in the past and how much emotional kind of digestion we still need to do. And that's not something to be rushed or believed that should be done right away. That's usually just a shadow as well. It's giving our bodies time to let things show up as they show up, and just give ourselves patience and love on that journey. So number 2 is of the journaling questions I want to give you. This one is really, really big for anyone who might be feeling like you're really stepping into your ideal version, but you're not, you can't, it's hard to keep going. You might find yourself back in the same patterns, back in that old version of yourself, back into believing who you thought you were. And it's the question of, what would I lose if I were to be successful in being this version of myself? What would I lose if I followed through on my intentions? What would I lose? Would I lose maybe, would some friendships fall away? Would I maybe lose acceptance from my parents or my family? Would they judge me and then I would lose their love maybe? And then start looking at what grief might need to be felt that maybe a part of you is projecting into the future that is then kind of blocking you from stepping into that version of yourself and that potential that you have. I'm going to continue talking about these things on my channel. They're so important. And I'm going to go deeper into different areas of life where it shows up, whether it be with business and money. I know money is going to be a big one because that one's has been such a big transformation and path for me, money and business, and then also health and wellness and romantic relationships and friendships. So I hope that this was helpful in some way. And truly, the most transformation, the biggest growth you will find is through taking a look at your shadows, accepting them, looking at where they come from, giving your body space to feel and digest what's from the past, so that those parts of yourself can feel safe in your wholeness and who you are, so that you can continue on doing the things that you're here to do. Take so much care.